to having this conversation with you and talking about um, here we go. Great. I am really delighted to welcome Korina Moss to the Instagram Live this week. I'm Julie Henricus. I'm the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime. Couple of housekeeping things before Korina and I start to talk. Pride Award. The Pride Award is for emerging LGBTQIA plus crime writers, and submissions are open through July 31st. It's a $2,000 award. You do not have to be a member of Sisters in Crime to submit your materials. So if you're watching this or listening to this and you know somebody who might be interested, please send them to the Sisters in Crime website. If you look under quick links, it's going to be right there. And also, Sisters in Crime members are almost done with the summer scrawl, which is at 5 write-ins a day for the entire month of July. It's going amazingly well. I want to give a shout out to, and I don't have a list of names right now, but there are write-in volunteers who have been hosting these write-ins for the entire month of July. We have write-ins all year long, usually on Tuesdays and Fridays and Saturdays. But during this month of July, it's a lot to pull off 5 write-ins a day for the entire month. And this incredible group of volunteers is doing it. And I'm so grateful. The energy and the feedback is just so great about the Summer Scrawl. So thank you to everyone who's participated. And if you're participating in it, please thank your host for being there, and more to come on those thanks, because it's amazing. SinC runs because of amazing volunteers, and I am so grateful for them. And speaking of volunteers, or people who show up, Korina Moss, welcome to the Instagram Live.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I love being here.
Well, I love having these conversations. And this month, we've been talking more about craft. And as I've said a million times, we could have the same conversation with people, on the very same topic, like point of view, and we could have 5 completely different conversations. So I love that. But this is sort of a conversation that is moving to the next phase. So when you're writing, and that's your world, and you're going to figure out craft, and you're going to do things. But when you become a published author, you're working with readers, and you may work forever on a book, as most of us do on that first book. But the readers are here for the long haul.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's the best part of writing a cozy, I think, is that you have the ability to write a series, and your readers want to pick up that first book, and they're hoping that, they will stick with you for the series. They really love that.
And they also will follow you to the next series or to the next project or something.
Right.
It's an amazing. This is why it's so much fun as an author to go to events, to go to conferences, to, even to be not who the reason everyone's going to this event, but you're sitting in the audience and you meet readers. It's just great. So, writers should not be afraid of meeting readers. But I love your topic, and is how to inspire reader loyalty. So as always, I'm going to sound like a genius, but Korina actually sent me the 5 topics she wants to talk about with this, and she's going to expand on them. But the first thing is, give your protagonist a series character arc.
Right. So, there are obviously lots of ways, as Julie said, to inspire reader loyalty. But I'm going to talk about it more as a writer when you're thinking about writing your series. As you're going, these are the things that you should keep in mind. And when you write a cozy mystery, you need a light touch. You want that character arc. You want your characters to have layers and deep, but it can't be too deep. You don't want a big traumatic arc, dramatic or traumatic. You just don't. We have to be mystery forward. We have to have that light touch. So the best thing about a series is that you get to show growth and progression and change in increments. And so you will show a little bit of it with each book, but the overall will be within your series. And so that keeps the series connected. That keeps each standalone one fine to read by itself. It'll be satisfying. But if your series readers read from the beginning, they'll really get an even deeper level of satisfaction because they'll be seeing that growth in small ways. So as you're writing, consider, okay, how has my character changed or progressed or learned, in book 3 compared to book 1? You don't want a stagnant character. You want that overall incremental growth.
And I love this topic. Again, such an excellent point, Korina, that we're talking about when you're writing a series. And cozy series are one thing, but any series, it could be thriller series, everything else needs these elements. I'm also going to just give a shout out to cozies because I think sometimes they are devalued as a genre, and also as the amount of work it takes to pull off a good cozy series.
Right.
And so I, just want to say to folks, there's a lot of work that goes into creating that community that people want to revisit over and over and over again, and they do. Cozies are enormously popular. So we're talking about this for cozies, but it can be applicable to other things. But cozies are an amazing subgenre of the traditional mystery. So I love the second one. Let your characters live between the books.
Right. So because, most of us, I don't really know anybody who unless you're writing a detective or a PI mystery. If you're writing a cozy, you don't want the murders back to back to back, in this quaint little idyllic town. You at least want a few months in between the next murder. So you have to remember that if, your first one comes out in the fall, your next one comes out in the summer, those months have passed for these characters. And so you have to keep that in mind as you're writing them. If a relationship, say, has changed in book 1 and ends up a certain way, you're not going to start that relationship exactly the same way as it ended if 6 months has passed. You at least have to make mention of, it's not going to be the first time you've seen the person again if you're in a small town. It's you are going to, if you have, say, a relationship where they had their first kiss at the end of the book and 6 months have passed. Well, now they've been seeing each other or something has happened between them in 6 months. You don't want the good stuff to happen in between the books. You want to save that. But you do still have to keep in mind that that time has happened, has passed, and make your characters behave and respond in that way, and kind of perhaps make a mention of it, but just keep that in mind as you're writing.
Yeah, and keep track of it as you're writing. Yes. of your timeline, because you may publish once a year or once, every 9 months, whatever. But in book time, this could be a 6-week span. So you've got to really keep track of seasons and this.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good, I did mine came out every 6 months. And so I mimicked, the season for the most part and the 6 months with mine to kind of keep them obviously I wasn't writing them at the same time they were coming out, but I kept that in mind. And so, like the last book, she has her 2-year anniversary for her cheese shop that after it opened in book 1. And so, like, I had to, I had to make sure, okay, has 2 years passed, and my characters also age. I know a lot of people, writers don't age their characters. They're kind of ageless, but they have holidays and, like you said, seasons and all of that and anniversaries sometimes. And so I actually, because I like the whole growth of everything, I actually have my characters age, which you have to keep track of as well.
Yeah, lots to keep track of, and start at the beginning, because you're
Yes.
going to
Don't
remember.
wait. Don't wait. They'll find it.
Have reoccurring community characters.
Yeah. So you were talking in the beginning about how readers love to come back and want to stick with you through these characters. And of course, you have to write great, compelling characters and likable characters, but also we all have those community characters that add color, the quirky ones, the grumpy ones, the whatever. And adds a familiarity for the reader to see them come back again. And you do want them to serve a purpose, but within the plot, but also it's just really great to find a way to have them serve that purpose so people can see the grocer again or the baker again or whatever, especially if they have played a big part in one of your books.
Right.
Because the reader will wonder, like in my book, I had all of the suspects were the neighboring owners of shops. And so to not show any of them in the next book, except for the culprit, um, people would be like, well, hey, what happened to so-and-so? They were in the whole book last time and now they're not even, and so that just keeps a nice continuity and again, makes it more realistic, makes it more familiar, makes your reader feel like, oh yes, I'm back in the town. Oh yes, there's so-and-so, don't just focus on your one mystery, your one the five suspects, the whatever. Make sure that your whole town and your whole community is still there.
Yes, I can't. And those secondary characters are oftentimes reader favorites because
Reader favorites. Oh, absolutely,
they're fun
absolutely.
and they're funny and they have insight and they know everybody.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yes. Now you're allowed to like make them a little over the top a lot of times. And so,
oh
yeah, they become reader favorites and you don't want to disappoint the readers.
no, you don't. Allow characters and relationships to change.
Right. And so this is a lot with number one, your character arc, but the relationships too. I think a lot of people for new writers forget that in a series that you're even if it's a friendship, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. Even a friendship, they change, they grow, they progress. If you have several like core series characters, sometimes you might focus on one or two of them with each book. And so just make sure that you're thinking about them. And again, just like in your character arc, ask yourself, okay, what's changed in by book, 3 than book 1? Can I see the change in the relationships, whether it's romantic or just, friendship wise? Have they gotten closer? Have they had a tiff? Have they learned something about each other? Whatever. Just, it's always about growth and the reality of that. As familiar as you want your readers to be, you also, life changes, people change, and kind of keep that along.
Well, and so we're going to, this is part of this, but let's have a conversation about this. When you're writing in a traditional publishing world, you'll
Hmm.
have a contract for 2 or 3 books at a time. They
Right.
don't usually give you a single contract for a series.
Right.
So, over those 2 or 3 books, you're going to do an arc for
Hmm.
characters and do things. If you're indie publishing, you have the same sort of thing. Like, this is the first 3, these are the next 3, whatever you're going to do. So you want to arc things over those 3 times. So don't rush relationships either. If there's a
Yes.
love interest, don't get them together in the first book because you
Right.
get nothing for the third. Like,
Right. And then yeah, and then what do? You have, what, they're married by the second book? No, you have to, there's plenty of ways to throw in things that get in the way. And they can be soap opera-y. They don't need to be though. Um and you can, without a lot of people don't like the romantic triangle. Without the romantic triangle, you can still have things happen. In my series, she, spoiler alert for people who haven't read it, she is with, it starts to be, one guy is flirty with her. And then in the second book, toward at the end of the second book, they go on, decide to go on a date. And then in the third book, they're about to get, actually be boyfriend, girlfriend, more serious. And she finds out a whole lot about him. And so that, that's the way, I had mine, kind of change and have her go, in a different direction. But you can have just two people together and have them, again, it's all a light touch, all incremental, all slowly, think about that. And I find it one of the best parts about writing a series is that you can do that. You can stretch it out.
Yeah, yeah, and exactly. And again, people don't love prolong, they don't love whatever, but they're willing to say, as long as there's growth and there's change,
Right,
they'll
right.
stick with you,
Yes, yeah. And there's reasons, make an actual, purpose for them, for that relationship, not especially romantic, not to stay, stagnant. And same with your core series characters. My series has my protagonist Willa, and then she's got three, of her good friends. Two of them work at the cheese shop, and one of them is her next door neighbor. And they're like, I call them Team Cheese. And so they have their own relationships that go on, and they're not always successful. You don't have to show only successful relationships on there. They can blow up or whatever. And so having your characters around you, especially the core characters, show growth and change and relationship change and all of that. Don't forget them either.
Yeah, no, great point. And the last point, this is gold, ground your setting.
Yes. So readers are, especially series readers, they are astute. Mystery readers are, especially cozy mystery readers, and they will remember. And so make sure you have an idea, a firm idea. Make yourself a map, even if you don't put it in the book, of what your town looks like, of what's there, and make sure that we as the reader can see it in our minds too. And there's different ways obviously to do that, not to tell us everything all at once and all of that. But even if you have a town with shops like I do, and many cozy mysteries have them, and certain shops that you mentioned in the last couple of books don't play a part in this, you still show them that, I just mentioned, and walking down the street, and she passed, the bakery, and she passed, and, name them. And so that your town is still as alive as those community characters are. They're still there. They still exist. Don't just show what is happening for that one book. Let your reader know that, yeah, the town is still there. We're still in it. And give them a good idea of not only the town, but the seasons, the feeling, the landscape around it. Let us know if it's a neighborhood in a city, that kind of thing, really make us feel like we're there. Make it almost as another character. Like that's how you should think of it, and how much time and energy you should put in it. Whether it's just for you and whatever shows on the page, or it's on the page, as much as you would put another character.
It's such a great point. And, you can completely make up your town, but you do need to put it someplace. And when you put it that place, so if you're doing a town in Massachusetts, you need to understand where it is and what's going on and what it feels like in different seasons and things. So, hardship, you might need to visit. But, using the real town is tricky because readers will say you can't take a left there.
Right. That's much more. Yeah. You have to research much more to make sure. And, you have to, you might have to put some fictional things in a real town if, you don't want, I don't know how real people feel about you putting a murder in front of their business or whatever. That's hard. But yes, it definitely, like my town is fictional, but it's in the Sonoma Valley, and When I talk about the surrounding towns, when I talk about the architecture of the buildings, that's all California. That's not here in New England that I'm used to, or whatever. That's all, I actually had I did a Zoom library club, book club call, and they thought I had grown up in there. They were like, "Oh, I know what town this is supposed to be," and they said it, and I was so pleased that they really had felt like that was the place, and that I had grown up there, which I haven't. I've never even been there, but I did. I was going to visit, like you said, but then COVID had hit when I started, so I did a ton of research. I think I did more research in the first book on the area than I did even on the cheese, because that is just it's so important. How it smells in the morning, how it, what vegetables are in season, if you're going to talk about passing a market. I mean, these little things that show up so small and inconsequential, but if you get them wrong, they're very consequential.
Well, they may, like in the fourth book, it may be incredibly important that cliff exists,
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And you can grow your town as you're building your series, and you need to, because you have to bring in people and more locations and things like that. So you don't have to do the whole thing at the beginning. You can do it as you need to, but you gotta be grounded. That's such a great point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what I did too. I didn't, I did my own map for me, and I left purposely some things, I put them in, and I left purposely some things open so that my town grew when the bicycle shop came in. And then I had, a character I wanted to introduce, and she was going to own the thrift store. And so, I had put that in. And so, things come and go, and yet my town was real enough and completed enough where it felt real, and then we were able to grow. And again, just like a character grows, like you said, the town can grow too. So think of it that way.
Yeah, this is so great. I mean, it's about reader loyalty, but it's about the setup for writers and how they can sort of make sure they're making it easy on themselves if they're writing a series.
It's, and I think it inspires reader loyalty, because when you have those things, you're connecting the books. It's not just one great book and whatever. And yes, your protagonist or your main characters, may keep them coming back. But if you, over time, over 2, 3, there's a lot of series out there readers can choose from. And if you connect these things and have these things, the readers will really feel like, your town is real and that they want to be there. And that's what you want. And I do feel like the way you write it and the way you connect each book is really important to readers coming back to your series and staying loyal to it.
Yeah. Awesome tips. Korina, thank you so much for
you, Julie.
Live. It's been lovely to see you.
Same here. Thanks.